Hey there everyone, it's Mr. Lane, here to introduce you to the art from Byzantium, the area known as Rome in the East. We also call this the art of eternity. A couple of quick facts. The Eastern Christian Roman Empire is known as Byzantium. The term Byzantium refers to anything that pertains to Byzantium, its territory, history, and culture. Now let's begin our lecture. Take good notes, and here we go. Byzantium key ideas. Rome in the Eastern Empire. The capital was named Constantinople. It remained the epicenter until 1453 when the Ottoman Turks took over. In 324, Constantine I founded Constantinople, the new Rome. That was Greek for Constantine's city, on site of ancient Byzantium. Constantine was the first imperial sponsor of Christianity. There is a complicated history for Hagia Sophia, or Church of the Holy Wisdom. Here will be the first time we see a dome that sits on 4 arches or pendentives. Since the Christian focus was on salvation for a glorious afterlife, interest in realistically representing objects of the world disappeared. As a result, some of the figures are represented in a formal, frontal, flat, and floating manner. They're usually tall, slim with slim faces and long noses. There is also very little movement depicted. Mosaics are intended to publicize and codify Christianity. And lastly, early leaders/popes were martyred, such as St. Peter. Here's a list of key terms you will learn about throughout the lecture. These are all of the artworks we will study. Art of the Byzantine, 3 golden ages: formal, frontal, flat, and floating. The early Byzantine was between 324 and 726. During 324, Constantine founds Constantinople. Justinian's rule was between 527 and 565 to the beginning of the Iconoclasm. The Middle Empire was between 843 and 1204. Relinquishment of the Iconoclasm to the Western Crusades, occupation of Constantinople, which prohibited the worship of idols. The Late Empire, the artists revived mural and icon painting. It was between 1261 and 1453. The recapture of Constantinople to the fall of the city to the Ottoman Turks in 1453. Constantinople falls to the Ottoman Turks, which was the empire created by the Anatolia, the area of modern Turkey, that grew to be one of the most powerful states in the world during the 15th and 16th centuries. Byzantine emperors spoke Greek and identified themselves as Romans. Byzantium was a Christian buffer against the expansion of Islam. The central article of faith, the Orthodox Christian doctrine, is where there is equality of the God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. All other versions of Christianity were considered heresies. Heresies is a belief or opinion contrary to Orthodox religious doctrine, especially Christian. Within that doctrine, they suppressed all of old Rome's polytheistic cults. Hagia Sophia, Constantinople, Istanbul, Turkey, 532 to 537. This building changed the course of world architecture. Justinian intended it to rival all other churches and make it a point that his power to build this church was supported by God. There were two builders and designers who were mathematicians, responsible for the existence of the church. The church is also known as the Church of Holy Wisdom. In scale, Hagia Sophia rivals the architectural wonders of Rome, like the Pantheon, for example. The huge buttresses are later additions to the Justinianic design. And after the Ottoman conquest of 1453, when Hagia Sophia became a mosque, the Turks constructed 4 towering minarets. Minarets, a tall, slender tower, or towers, typically part of a mosque, with a balcony from which Muslims would call to prayer. This building is now a museum, and although it may be soon reconsecrated as a Muslim shrine and reopened for worship. To achieve this illusion of a floating dome of heaven, pendentives were used to transfer the weight from the great dome to the piers beneath rather than to the walls. With pendentives, not only could the space beneath the dome be unobstructed or uninterrupted, but several of windows could puncture the walls. The pendentives created the impression of a dome suspended above, not held up by walls. In pendentive construction, from the Latin pendere to hang, a dome rests on what is, in effect, a second, larger dome. The builders omit the top portion in 4 segments around the rim of the larger dome, producing 4 curved triangles, or pendentives. The pendentives join to form a ring and 4 arches whose places bound a square. Pendentives make it possible to place a dome on a ring over a square. Squinches achieve the same goal by bridging the corners of the square to form an octagonal base. In Hagia Sophia, Justinian's architects succeeded in fusing 2 previously independent architectural traditions: the vertically oriented central plan building and the longitudinal oriented basilica. Longitudinal, any structure designed with a rectangular shape. The nave is longer than the transept, and in which parts are symmetrical against an axis. Hagia Sophia is a domed basilica. Buttressing the great dome are eastern and western half domes, whose thrusts descend in turn into smaller half domes. The pendentive system is a dynamic solution to the problem of setting a round dome over a square, making possible a union of centralized and longitudinal basilica structures, as you see here. The marble used for the floor and ceiling was produced in present-day Eastern Turkey and also Syria, while other bricks used in the walls and parts of the floor came from as far away as North Africa. The interior of Hagia Sophia is lined with enormous marble slabs that are said to have been designed to imitate moving water. The feature that distinguishes Hagia Sophia from equally lavish Roman buildings such as the Pantheon is the special mystical quality of the light flooding the interior. Visitors to Hagia Sophia from Justinian's time to today have been struck by the light within the church and its effect on the human spirit. The 40 windows at the base of the dome create the illusion that the dome rests on the light pouring through them. San Vitale, Ravenna, Italy, 526 to 547. The theme of this church is the imperial might that God is on the people's side. The church and the state become united, where the laws of the church and state are united under the laws of God. Remember Ravenna from late antiquity? Ravenna was the seat of the Roman Empire in the 5th century and then of Byzantine Italy until the 8th century. During Justinian's reign, Ravenna enjoyed great prosperity. San Vitale is unlike any of the early Christian churches of Ravenna. It is not a basilica, rather it is centrally planned. San Vitale honored Saint Vitalis, a 2nd century Ravenna martyr. Here you see the two plans compared. In the apse vault is a vision of the second coming. Christ, youthful in early Christian tradition, sits atop the world and holds a scroll with 7 seals. Here's a video you can watch about making ancient and Byzantine mosaics. Justinian, Bishop Maximianus, in attendance. Mosaic on the north wall of the apse, San Vitale, Ravenna, Italy, 547. In the Justinian mosaic, the emperor is at the center, distinguished from the other dignitaries by his purple robe and halo, which connect him with the Savior in the vault above that we just mentioned. Justinian actually never visited physically San Vitale. At Justinian's left, at the right on the mosaic, is Bishop Maximianus, the man responsible for San Vitale's completion. The mosaic stressed the bishop's importance by labeling his figure with the only identifying inscription in the composition, although some scholars debate this claim. San Vitale's mosaics reveal the new Byzantine aesthetic. Justinian is foremost among the weightless and speechless frontal figures hovering before the viewer, their positions in space uncertain. A monogram is a sign of identity usually formed of the combined initials of a name. The artist divided the figures into 3 groups: the emperor and his staff, the clergy, and the imperial guard, who are bearing a shield with the monogram of Christ. Each group has a leader whose feet proceed by 1 foot overlapping the feet of those who follow. The positions of Justinian and Maximianus are curiously ambiguous. Although the emperor appears to be slightly behind the bishop, the golden paten, large shallow bowl or plate for the Eucharist bread he carries, overlaps the bishop's arms. Thus, symbolized by place and gesture, the imperial and churchly powers are in balance. Here's a comparison of the figures in the mosaic to a Roman frieze. Theodora in attendance. The portraits in the Theodora mosaic exhibit the same stylistic traits as those in the Justinian mosaic, but the artist represented the woman within a definite architecture, perhaps the atrium of San Vitale. The empress stands in state beneath an imperial canopy, waiting to follow the emperor's procession. An attendant beckons her to pass through the curtained doorway. That she is outside the sanctuary in a courtyard with a fountain and only about to enter attests that, in the ceremonial protocol, her rank was not quite equal to her consorts. Theodora, who was 15 years younger than Justinian, initially attracted his attention because of her beauty, but she soon became his most trusted advisor. Jacob wrestling the angel, folio 3, Vienna Genesis, early 6th century, tempera, gold, and silver on purple vellum, 1 foot, about 9 inches. The oldest well-preserved painted manuscript containing biblical scenes is the early 6th century Vienna Genesis, so called because of its present location. Here are some illustrations from the first book of the Bible. Some of these earliest narratives have been preserved. Difficult process to produce a manuscript like this because of the pages were made from animal skin and all the text was written by hand that was originally written in silver. The pages also were dyed purple that suggests a royal commission. We're not sure who made this or where it was made. The pages are fine calfskin called vellum, dyed with rich purple, the same dye used to give imperial cloth its distinctive color. Folio is a sheet of paper folded once to make 2 leaves or 4 pages of a book or manuscript. Illuminated manuscript is a luxurious handbook made with painted illustrations and decorations. Here we see Jacob in brown with a red tunic leading his family across the river. His wife are on donkeys and his sons are behind. We see them all crossing a river. Afterwards, Jacob becomes separated from his family, and then he meets a man that he wrestles with. This man, or angel, wants to bless Jacob. The angel blesses Jacob, and then the family continues to go on their way. We see a little bit of detail of classical columns on the bridge. Notice that also all the figures are the same size. There's also a little bit of natural folding on the drapery. And the man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day has broken." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with man, and have prevailed." Genesis 32, 22, 28. As a result of this story, Jacob is no longer called Jacob, but Israel. This is an important transformation in Jacob's life. This is the moment in which the angel touches Jacob's hip joint and puts it out of place. We can also see some classical references. For example, the form of their bodies that you can see under the drapery, as well as the bridges and the columns that have Roman arches. To make the figures fit within the space, the artist also distorted them and made them a little bit smaller. Virgin, Theotokos, and child between saints, Theodora and George, icon 6th or early 7th century, encaustic on wood. An icon, images in Greek, are small portable paintings depicting Christ, the Virgin, or saints, maybe a combination of the 3. The Eastern Christians considered icons a personal, intimate, and indispensable medium for spiritual transition with holy figures. Some icons came to be regarded as wonder-working, and believers ascribed miracles and healing powers to them. Theotokos, in Eastern Orthodoxy, the designation of the Virgin Mary as Mother of God is what that means. The 2 guardian saints intercede with the Virgin on the viewer's behalf. Behind them, 2 angels gaze upward to a shaft of light where the hand of God appears. The foreground figures are strictly frontal and have a solemn demeanor. In the background, details are few. The shallow forward plane of the pictures dominates as well. We see traces of the Greco-Roman illusion as well noted in the portrait of the Virgin in her personalized features. She glances sideways, and in the posing of the angels' heads, too, we can see that Greco-Roman illusion. But the painter rendered the saints' bodies in the new Byzantine manner. Many Christians have been deeply suspicious of the practice of creating images of divinely figures, whether on portable panels, on the walls of churches, or especially as statues that reminded them of ancient idols. The iconoclasts, breakers of images, were the opponents of Christian figural art that had in mind the Old Testament prohibition of images that the Lord dictated to Moses in the second commandment. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is on the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. Exodus 20:4-5. Iconoclast controversy. Opposition to icons became especially strong in the 8th century when the faithful often burned incense and knelt before the icons in prayer to seek protection or cure for illness. This became confused with idol worship, and this brought about an imperial ban on the making not only of icons but all sacred images, as well as edicts ordering the destruction of existing images, as we just mentioned, the iconoclasm or the iconoclast. The controversy lasted over 120 years. It was violent and destructive. All over the empire, precious works of art were obliterated. The controversy was finally resolved in 843 when the empire authorized the production and use of icons and the decision to allow religious art. Virgin of Compassion icon, Vladimir Virgin, late 11th or early 12th century with later repainting, tempera on wood. The Vladimir Virgin is the most renowned Middle Byzantine icon produced in Russia. Unfortunately, the revered image has been repainted many times and only traces of the original surface remain. In this icon, the artist depicted Mary as the Virgin of Compassion, who presses her cheek against her son's as she contemplates his future. The reverse side shows the instrument of Christ's passion, which we don't see here. We just looked at an example of an art piece that has been repainted several times, and you saw the result. So now it's your turn. What do you think? There's an article here for you to read and respond to some questions about art restoration. Thanks for watching. May your choices reflect your hopes, not your fears. Nelson Mandela.